Today we're talking about a walking, talking, bongo-playing paradox, a guy who cracked the secrets of the atom and, just for fun, the top secret safes of his colleagues. Richard Feynman wasn't just some Nobel Prize-winning physicist. He was an artist, a philosopher, and honestly one of the most fascinating scientific figures of the entire 20th century. I mean, just look at this. On one hand, you've got this guy, a key player on the Manhattan Project, surrounded by the greatest physicists of his generation. And on the other hand, you have this guy, a total free spirit, banging on bongo drums, just finding the rhythm in the world. Believe it or not, they are the exact same person. So what's the deal? How do you get from one to the other? That's really the big question we're going to dig into. How did this incredibly unconventional character completely revolutionize the way we understand the universe? All right, Section 1, Forging a Physicist. To really get a handle on the man, you have to go right back to the beginning to see how his unique way of thinking was formed. A huge part of the story is his father, Melville. Now, he wasn't a scientist, he was a sales manager, but he taught his son not what to think, but how to think. He wouldn't just tell him the name of a bird. He'd ask, why does it do that? What do you notice? And that, right from the start, instilled this deep, lifelong curiosity and, maybe more importantly, a healthy skepticism of just accepting things because someone told you so. And let me tell you, that curious mind was backed by some serious brain power. When he applied for his PhD at Princeton, he did something that had never been done before. He got a perfect score on the physics entrance exam. Perfect. But even with a perfect score, his path wasn't guaranteed. This quote, this is from an actual letter written by the head of Princeton's physics department. It's a pretty stark reminder that, despite his obvious genius, Feynman was up against the ugly reality of anti-Semitic quotas that were all too common in the Ivy League back then. Section 2, Secrets of the Atomic Bomb. Well, his talent was just too immense to ignore, and pretty soon, he was recruited for the most secret, most high-stakes project of World War II, the Manhattan Project. So welcome to Los Alamos, New Mexico, a secret city built on a remote mesa, just filled with brilliant minds, Oppenheimer, Betty, you name it, and a very young Richard Feynman. Their job? Build an atomic bomb before the Nazis did. And at just 24 years old, Feynman was put in charge of his own group. Now, to deal with the insane pressure of it all, Feynman became a notorious prankster. He figured out that a lot of his colleagues were leaving top-secret documents in really simple, easy-to-pick file cabinets. So he started cracking their safes and leaving little notes inside. It was his playful, kind of anti-authoritarian way of pointing out some really serious security flaws. But behind the physics and the pranks, there was this profound private heartbreak going on. His first wife, Arlene, the love of his life, was in a sanatorium in Albuquerque, dying from tuberculosis. He had married her knowing she was terminally ill, and every single weekend he would borrow a car and make the long drive to be with her. She passed away just 1 month before the first atomic bomb was tested. After the war, Feynman was pretty burned out. He took a position at Cornell University and felt like he'd lost his touch, that he couldn't do physics anymore. But it was right there that he would make the discovery that would define his entire legacy. Okay, so the biggest problem in physics at the time was something called quantum electrodynamics, or QED for short. It's basically the theory of how light and matter interact. The only problem was the equations were a total mess. Every time they tried to calculate something, they'd get these ridiculous infinite answers. The theory was basically broken. And this was Feynman's answer. Instead of pages and pages of impossible math, he came up with these simple little pictures. These Feynman diagrams are like a visual shorthand, a way to keep track of the incredibly complex dance of subatomic particles. They completely changed how physicists approach the problem, turning these impossible calculations into something you could actually visualize. It was just pure genius. That work, of course, won him the Nobel Prize in 1965. But by then, he was already building his second great legacy out at Caltech. See, he wasn't just a great physicist, he was a phenomenal teacher. He had this amazing gift for cutting through all the jargon and explaining the deep beauty of physics so that anyone could get it. His lectures are now legendary. Okay, Section 4, A Voice for the Truth. In his later years, Feynman's reputation for clear, brutally honest thinking was about to be tested on a huge national stage, cementing his role as this powerful voice for scientific integrity. January 28, 1986. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded just 73 seconds after liftoff. All 7 astronauts were killed. It was this incredible national trauma. Feynman, who hated Washington, was very reluctantly convinced by his wife to join the presidential commission that was investigating what went wrong. So Feynman, being Feynman, ignored all the bureaucracy and went straight to the engineers. And then, in a now famous televised hearing, he did this brilliantly simple experiment. Step 1, he got a piece of the O-ring material. Step 2, he squeezed it in a C-clamp. And step 3, he just dunked it in his glass of ice water. The result? The rubber failed to spring back. And in that one simple, elegant demonstration, he showed the entire world the fatal flaw. What he had discovered was this massive disconnect between NASA's engineers, who knew the risks were way too high, and NASA management, who were busy pushing a public relations story. His personal appendix to the final report included this powerful sentence, which really could have been the motto for his entire life: "Nature cannot be fooled." But we have to be honest here, Feynman's character was not without its own complexities and contradictions. As the source material points out, he did face protests in the late 60s and early 70s for using what were described as sexist anecdotes in his lectures. And a chapter in his autobiography about how he learned to seduce women has, for good reason, drawn a lot of criticism over the years. At the same time, he was also the person who stood up and supported Jenna Joy LaBelle, Caltech's first female professor, in her successful fight for tenure when many of his colleagues wouldn't. He was, in every sense of the word, a complicated man. Section 5, Feynman's lasting echo. So, when you put it all together, how do you sum up a life so brilliant, so strange, and so unconventional? Well, we can start by looking at the legacy he left behind. Feynman died from cancer in 1988. He was 69. And for a man whose life and ideas were just so vibrant and loud, his final resting place is remarkably simple. It's a quiet end to a life that was lived anything but. His peers certainly understood his unique gift. Julian Schwinger, who shared the Nobel with him, but whose own work was famously dense and mathematical, called Feynman the outstanding intuitionist of our age. He didn't just calculate things, he understood them on a gut level. And maybe this is the phrase that gets to the heart of it all. People say this was often written on his blackboard at Caltech. For Feynman, understanding wasn't some passive thing you did by memorizing facts. No, it was an active process. It was about building, about creating, about taking things apart and putting them back together yourself. This philosophy was his guide for everything, from fixing radios as a kid and cracking safes at Los Alamos to completely redrawing the quantum world. He found his understanding through creation, and in doing so, he left all of us with a simple but pretty profound question. What will you create today?